The day I was offered $1 billion to disappear from the woman I loved, I realized that some choices can make a man rich in money while leaving him completely poor in the heart. I was sitting across from the most powerful businessman in the city, a man whose signature could move millions, when he calmly placed a document in a bank draft worth $1 billion in front of me and told me that if I truly loved his daughter, I would take the money and walk away from her forever. My hands trembled as I stared at the number, because I had spent most of my life struggling to pay rent, repair an old car, and keep my small business alive. 1 billion naira could have changed everything I had ever known. But what happened next changed not only my life, but the life of the woman I loved in a way none of us could have imagined. Before you continue, if you believe that kindness is more valuable than money, that love deserves a chance, and that people can find hope and second chances even when life seems impossible, please like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so you can remain part of our family and our community. My name is Everett Hale, and before that morning, I believed I understood what sacrifice meant. I had grown up watching my mother work 2 jobs after my father left us with debts he could not repay. We never had expensive clothes, impressive houses, or family connections, but my mother taught me something money could never buy: a person's value was not measured by what they possessed, but by what they were willing to give when nobody was watching. After university, I started a small logistics company with an aging delivery van and a borrowed office barely large enough for a desk. Some months were good, while others left me wondering whether I should close everything and find ordinary employment. It was during one of those difficult periods that I met Celeste Whitmore. Celeste was the daughter of Conrad Whitmore, one of the wealthiest men in the country, but she did everything possible to hide that fact. I first met her at a community food center where I had volunteered to help distribute groceries to struggling families. She was wearing simple clothes, carrying boxes, and quietly helping elderly people without waiting for anyone to notice. What caught my attention was not her beauty, although she was beautiful in a way that made people turn their heads, but the patience in her eyes. She remembered people's names. She listened when they spoke. She never looked at anyone as though their poverty made them less important. I assumed she was another volunteer like me, and for several weeks we worked beside each other without knowing much about one another. Our friendship grew naturally. We began meeting for inexpensive lunches after volunteering, walking through public gardens during the afternoon, and talking about our dreams. Celeste told me she wanted to build affordable housing for families who had spent years moving from one temporary place to another. I told her about my struggling company and my dream of turning it into a business that would create stable jobs for young people who had never been given a fair opportunity. She never laughed at my ambitions. Instead, she encouraged me when I felt like giving up. Slowly, without either of us planning it, friendship became love. The truth about Celeste's family came out on an ordinary afternoon when a black luxury car stopped beside us outside a community center. A sharply dressed man stepped out and respectfully called her by her full name. I watched Celeste's face change as she realized there was no longer any way to hide the truth. She finally told me that Conrad Whitmore was her father. I was stunned. I had heard his name for years. His companies owned hotels, construction firms, transportation networks, and several charitable foundations. His wealth was beyond anything I could imagine. Celeste had not told me because she wanted to know whether I loved her or the world attached to her surname. I admitted that I felt uncomfortable about the difference between our lives, but she reminded me that love did not become less real simply because 2 people came from different circumstances. For the first time in my life, I understood what it meant to be loved without being measured by success. Yet Conrad Whitmore did not share his daughter's confidence. When he learned about our relationship, he immediately ordered his private investigators to examine my entire life. They discovered my debts, my struggling company, my mother's modest home, and every financial mistake I had ever made. To him, I was not a man who loved his daughter. I was a risk. Several days later, Conrad invited me to his corporate office. The building seemed to stretch into the sky, and everything inside it reflected wealth and control. His assistant led me into a quiet office overlooking the city. Conrad remained standing beside the window until I entered, then placed a folder on the table. Inside were documents proving that he knew almost everything about my finances. He told me that Celeste had been protected from people who wanted access to his wealth since childhood, and he believed I was simply another man who had discovered an opportunity. I tried to explain that I had never asked Celeste for money and had never even allowed her to pay for my business expenses, but he seemed unconvinced. Then he pushed the bank draft across the table. N1 billion. My breath stopped. I stared at it so long that the room seemed to disappear around me. Conrad told me I could use the money to clear every debt, buy a beautiful home, rebuild my company, and live comfortably for the rest of my life. There was only one condition. I had to leave Celeste immediately, never contact her again, and make her believe that I had chosen money over her. He even offered to arrange opportunities in another city so that I could start over without anyone knowing what had happened. For several seconds, I imagined everything that money could do. I imagined my mother never worrying about bills again. I imagined expanding my company and employing hundreds of people. I imagined paying off every debt and finally living without the constant fear of financial failure. I understood why some people would accept without hesitation. But then I remembered Celeste sitting beside an elderly woman at the food center, listening to her story when nobody else had time. I remembered the way she had encouraged me when my company was nearly collapsing. I remembered that she had never once asked how much I earned. The money could solve my problems, but it could not replace the person who had made me believe I was worthy of love. I pushed the bank draft back across the table. Conrad looked at me as though he had expected resistance but not certainty. I told him that I could not sell Celeste's trust for any amount of money. I did not pretend that N1 billion meant nothing to me. It meant everything to a man like me. But accepting it would mean becoming someone my mother had never raised me to be. I told Conrad that if he truly believed I was after his money, then he should watch what I did when I had nothing to gain. I walked out of that office with empty hands, but somehow I felt richer than I had ever felt in my life. What I did not know was that Conrad had already arranged for Celeste to be taken to another country for what he called a family business program. When I returned to my office, I found that she had left me a message saying she needed to see me. Before we could meet, her father intervened. Celeste was told that I had accepted his offer and taken the money. Conrad showed her a carefully prepared story claiming that I had agreed to disappear because I wanted financial security more than love. She was devastated. Celeste refused to believe it at first, but her father had anticipated every question. He showed her false evidence suggesting that I had already begun planning a new life elsewhere. Because I had never told her about the meeting, she had no reason to suspect the truth. She felt betrayed by the one person she had trusted completely. Meanwhile, I discovered that Conrad had quietly blocked several business opportunities connected to my company. Clients began canceling contracts. Suppliers demanded immediate payments. Within weeks, the company I had spent years building was close to collapse. I could have fought back publicly. I could have exposed Conrad and told Celeste everything. But I knew that doing so could turn her against her father forever, and I did not want our love to become another weapon in their family conflict. Instead, I began rebuilding from almost nothing. I sold what little I owned, moved my operations into a smaller warehouse, and accepted small delivery contracts that barely covered expenses. Every morning, I arrived before sunrise, but because our story takes place in the daylight, the most important moments of my journey happened under the honest brightness of the sun. I wanted to prove that I could survive without wealth, without Conrad's approval, and without using Celeste's name. Months passed before Celeste discovered the truth. One afternoon, she returned unexpectedly from her father's business trip and went through documents in his private study. She found the original bank records showing that the N1 billion had never been transferred to me. She found the untouched bank draft. She found the agreement Conrad had prepared and, more importantly, security footage from the day I had visited his office. The footage showed me pushing the money back toward him and walking away. Celeste was crushed by the realization that her father had lied to her. But the discovery did not immediately bring happiness. She was furious, heartbroken, and ashamed that she had doubted the man she loved. She confronted Conrad, and for the first time in decades, the powerful billionaire had no business strategy capable of protecting him from the pain on his daughter's face. Celeste told him that he had spent his entire life trying to protect her from people who might hurt her, yet he had become the person who hurt her most. Conrad finally admitted why he had done it. Years earlier, his own younger brother had been manipulated by someone who wanted access to the family's fortune. The betrayal had nearly destroyed their family, and Conrad had spent decades believing that wealth attracted people who could never truly love him or his daughter. He had convinced himself that testing me was protection. But in trying to protect Celeste from being used, he had treated me like a criminal before I had ever committed a crime. Celeste found me at my small warehouse on a bright afternoon. I was loading boxes into an old delivery truck when I saw her standing across the street. For a moment, neither of us moved. There were tears in her eyes, and I could see how much pain she had carried. She did not ask me for an explanation because she already knew the truth. She simply admitted that she had been wrong to believe I would choose money over her. I told her that what hurt most was not losing the money or the business opportunities. It was knowing that the woman I loved had believed I could abandon her so easily. She apologized without excuses. I accepted her apology, but I also told her that forgiveness did not mean pretending nothing had happened. We would have to rebuild trust just as carefully as we had built our love. Celeste agreed. Instead of returning to her father's mansion, she began working beside me. She used her knowledge of property development to help me create a new business model that combined affordable transportation with community housing projects. She did not invest her father's money. She invested her time, skills, and reputation. Months later, Conrad came to the same warehouse where he had once considered me unworthy of his daughter. He did not arrive with lawyers, assistants, or security guards. He came alone. He admitted that I had taught him something he had forgotten: sometimes protecting the people we love means trusting them enough to make their own choices. He apologized for the lies, for destroying my business opportunities, and for forcing his daughter to choose between family and love. Then he offered to help rebuild my company. I refused the offer at first because I did not want our relationship to become another financial transaction. But Conrad did something unexpected. He did not insist. Instead, he asked what he could do to make amends without controlling my future. I told him that if he wanted to help, he should invest in the community project Celeste and I had started, not because I was his daughter's partner, but because struggling families deserved opportunities. He agreed. That decision became the beginning of something far greater than wealth. Our company eventually grew into a successful social enterprise that provided affordable transportation, employment, and housing assistance to thousands of families. Conrad became one of its supporters, but he never again tried to control its direction. Celeste and I built our relationship slowly, honestly, and with a deeper understanding of what trust really meant. We learned that love was not proven by expensive gifts or grand promises. It was proven in ordinary moments when walking away would have been easier. Years later, when I looked back at the day $1 billion had been placed in front of me, I realized that the greatest gift was never the money I refused. It was the truth that choice revealed. I discovered who I was when temptation was placed directly in my hands. Celeste discovered that love could survive betrayal when both people were willing to rebuild. Conrad discovered that wealth could buy protection, but it could never buy trust. And together, we learned that sometimes the hardest decision in life leads us toward the life we were meant to live. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another emotional journey. Before we end, leave a meaningful comment telling us what you would have done if someone offered you $1 billion to walk away from the person you truly loved. Would you take the money, or would you choose love and trust? Sometimes the most valuable thing a person can possess is not what they have in their bank account, but the courage to remain faithful when nobody would blame them for walking away. In the end, I did not become rich because I accepted N1 billion. I became rich because I refused to sell something that money could never replace. I gained a partner who believed in second chances, a family that learned to forgive, and a purpose greater than anything I had imagined. And whenever I see the homes our company has helped build or the young people who now have jobs because we refuse to give up, I remember that one simple decision changed everything. I walked away from a fortune that morning, but life eventually gave me something worth far more, a love that survived money, fear, betrayal, and doubt, and a future built not on what we could buy, but on what we were willing to give.